Hey guys, Grow the Farm Up. Today we're out on a little crop tour and we're looking at some narrow row beans. These are beans that have been drilled into 7.5 inch row spacing with a Great Plains drill. They were planted about the 10th of May. It is now the 8th of June. Turn this around and take a look. And let's have a little discussion about narrow row beans and Enlist and Xtendflex soybeans from the perspective of an independent seedsman. The reason I started drilling beans, one, I think as farmers, probably one of the #1 things that we are trying to harvest is photosynthesis and sunlight. So narrow row beans get to canopy a lot sooner. You can see the rows in 7.5 inch centers. And now let's look up close and personal, and you can see what I've learned about drilling soybeans. For example, this bean right here that's standing on his own, he's gonna get 6.5 feet tall and put 130, 140 pods on. These beans over here that are planted more kind of right uniformly, just right next to each other, they're going to do their normal thing and put their 60, 70, 80 pods on. You do have some areas like this because a drill is a controlled spill, but these beans will fill in and canopy much sooner than beans planted into 30-inch rows. So I'm curious what you guys think about that. You might ask, well, if narrow rows are better, why don't we do it in everything? Well, we tried it in corn. We went down to 20 inches and saw really no yield difference, no yield gain or anything like that. Really, we just saw equipment cost, and the whole world, well, the entire United States and most of this hemisphere is set up for 30-inch row crops, obviously. So nothing wrong with that. Let's talk about Enlist versus Xtend from an independent seedsman's perspective. I grew Enlist beans a decade ago, 3 years before they came on to the market in a stewardship program. And I grew Xtend and then the new Xtendflex beans in a stewardship program also. A little bit right along the same time frame. Now, this is what I have found. When I plant an Enlist bean in a 30-inch row, or I plant an Enlist bean in a 7.5 inch row with a drill, the Enlist is winning between 7 and I've seen as much as 15 bushels. When I plant a Xtendflex bean in a 30-inch row, and I plant an Enlist bean in a 30-inch row, there is virtually no yield difference. You could give a bushel or two advantage to Xtendflex, and I think that is just on the power of the fact that it's going to have just a little more ability to canopy. So the Enlist soybean has been bred to where the leaf on the soybean itself actually uptakes anything that lands on it. And that's why you hear guys talking about herbicide burn. I think it's just the way that the Enlist are bred. In fact, I know it is, because I know that that's the way that the Enlist beans are bred. These happen to be Xtendflex. Xtendflex soybeans are bred to just have a big waxy green looking, kind of almost sexy looking leaf that really looks good. You're going to have a little more biomass. You're going to have a little more plant mass. The plants are going to get a little taller, and in 30-inch rows you're going to have a better shot at hitting canopy. I think that's what we've learned about the difference in the soybean. You're going to have in the Xtendflex soybeans, you're going to have less pods per inch of plant growth, or less pods per foot of plant growth. And in the Enlist bean, it might be a shorter bean, but you're going to have just as many pods set That's for sure. Now, let's talk about the herbicide programs. The Enlist herbicide program is without question the far superior herbicide program. Enlist is a completely different 2,4-D formulation than Xtendamax or Ingenia, which is the Xtendflex dicamba herbicide that everybody's kind of up in arms about, if you will, about drift. And in the state of Nebraska, you cannot spray dicamba past the 20th of June. So you've got 13 days to spray on your herbicide of dicamba if you think you need it. Whereas in Enlist, you have no dates to restrict you, and that is because Enlist uses a heavier choline salt in its 2,4-D formulation, and it's a completely different 2,4-D formulation than what Xtendflex uses. The Enlist 2,4-D formulation uses a heavier choline salt, and I have tested this over a decade it just doesn't drift, that heavier choline salt. The Xtendamax and Ingenia uses a lighter moline salt, which tends to volatilize and can pick up off the ground and drift with the wind and then set down and create a half mile or an eighth of a mile, kind of like a herbicide burn. And you know, you hear a lot of neighbors calling other neighbors. You've read a lot of articles about it and things like that. This is what I've found, is that I'm getting a great response in Enlist beans to foliar feed, because the bean is bred so that the leaf can uptake basically anything you lay on the leaf. When I put a carbon chelated calcium foliar feed on my Enlist soybeans, I'm getting a 7 to 12 to 15 bushel yield bump, and that's where the Enlist bean is out yielding the Xtendflex bean, where I am drilling them in 7.5-inch narrow rows and getting to canopy sooner. Getting to canopy is really you know, the key to any crop for yield, weed control, also shading the ground to hold the moisture down and get the roots growing deep and all of that good stuff. So again, the Enlist, remember, you know, I've had a 10-mile-an-hour wind out of the south, sprayed Enlist right up next to some Xtendflex beans to my north, and the Enlist drifted 3 rows or 90 inches, and that was the extent of it. So that is, and that's why, because of the heavier choline salt and the completely different 2,4-D formulation. Now the soybeans themselves are, they look a little different. I think in 30-inch rows, I would have to kind of give the nod to Xtendflex, just because you're going to have a little bit more plant, a plant material. You're going to have larger plant. You're going to have more vegetation, and you're going to hit canopy sooner. I know some 30-inch row Enlist beans that don't really even canopy. I've seen a lot of 30-inch row Enlist beans from last year and a couple years ago that never really hit full canopy. So I'm having good luck drilling my Enlist beans, and these happen to be Xtendflex and Xtendflex beans. I like to do it just because getting to canopy sooner rather than later, controlling the broadleaves and the palmer amaranths in soybeans is really one of the most difficult things to do in all environments when you're growing soybeans. It's what led to and brought about the Enlist and the Xtendflex herbicide packages and trait packages in soybeans. So we had something, because palmer amaranth, mare's tail, you know, a number of other water hemp, dog bane, I mean, a lot of some other things have become resistant to the herbicide modes of action that we have available to us. today. So they came out with Enlist and then Xtendflex, which is essentially a 2,4-D resistant soybean. And there's two different types to do it. There's the XtendiMax and Xtendflex that uses the lighter moline salt that you can't spray past the 20th of June, and that will volatilize, pick up, and drift, and so you really got to be careful when you're spraying dicamba, especially post-emerge. Enlist is the best spray system out there, bar none, hands down, no question. But the soybean, you know what? They do not look as good as dicamba soybeans. It's just as Xtendflex soybeans. It's just that simple. I mean, you know, look at this. This is just a big, nice looking, just like waxy leaf. But you see, here's the thing. I'm getting absolutely zero response from putting on my carbon chelated calcium foliar feed like 6 years running on Xtendflex soybeans, because I don't think the leaf, I think the leaf, well, I know the way they're bred. They're bred to where that leaf is basically just a big waxy green leaf, and so it doesn't pucker up. And the Xtendflex bean is actually bred to pucker up, and it will put on just as many pods, and they'll just be closer together down the plant, is what I've found. But that's the main difference. You know, overall, I can't sit here and tell you that I think one's better than the other. There's reasons to plant both. Drilling beans, definitely Enlist is the way to go. Planting in 30-inch rows, I would maybe tend back towards the Xtendflex. You know, but again, you got to go back to it. I think it really all comes down to the way they're bred. The Enlist bean allows whatever touches the plant tissue is absorbed into the plant. Therefore, you're going to have some reaction, and you're going to have some positive reaction to a foliar application, whereas I have seen absolutely no visual difference after a foliar application, and absolutely no yield difference in foliar application trials of Xtendflex beans. And so that's why I've been able to get my Enlist beans to out yield my Xtendflex beans in 7.5-inch rows. You know, I don't like that you can't spray Xtendflex beans with dicamba past the 20th of June. That's a major strike against Xtendflex and a point for Enlist. But I also don't necessarily love that the Enlist beans really don't canopy, don't have as much foliage on the soybean. But I will say this, I think the Enlist bean harvests a little better because you have less foliage, and you're basically just trying to bring in pods and a few stems. Now in the Xtendflex beans, you're pulling in and you're trying to cut maybe 5-6 foot tall plants. And I've found that the Xtendflex beans lodge a lot more because they get tall enough, whereas the Enlist beans won't lodge at all. So I hope that was a little bit educational for you. That's what I've found. I've been growing them as an independent seedsman for going on basically. And these are the things that I've found. It's really important to understand the difference between the Enlist 2,4-D formulation and the heavier choline salt, and the Xtendflex, which would be the Ingenia and the XtendiMax herbicide formulation that uses the lighter moline salt and can volatilize. So those are the two main differences. Overall, yield wise, I'm giving the edge to Enlist by a few bushels, just because I'm able to drill. And I mean, that looks pretty good. This field's gonna be, in 10 days, I'll come back out, take a video of it, and you guys will be surprised at how far this field's come along. Just take a quick look right here. Look at how many beans are in. You know, I lay a 3-foot tape measure on the ground by a 3-foot tape measure on the ground. I don't have it with me right now, but that would be from about here to about here to about here, and then about here. And then you count how many beans are in there. And that tells you, you know, how you're doing. Well, I've got almost twice as many beans in a 3-foot by 3-foot area as in this drilled field as I do versus in my 30-inch row planted bean fields, when you actually get down and count the beans. And beans are just oh so flexible. Let's touch on it one more time. This bean right here, standing kind of all by himself, you know, look, he doesn't have a bean for 6 inches in any direction. And this is part of the, you know, a drill is a controlled spill. A 30-inch row corn planter row unit is a much better planter row unit than a drill row unit. No one would argue that. But this bean will get 6.5 feet tall and put, you know, 120, 130 plus plume out and fill the field in. I will say this, the dry land, you know, as we're talking about row unit quality, on my dry land, as you know, we're in like a 50-year drought out here. We still have not received any measurable moisture and going on 95 days. I think 18 hundredths of moisture out here on this particular field in the last 95 days. 18 hundredths. That's not even a quarter of an inch. And they came 3 hundredths at a time and 0.02 hundredths and 12 drops. And oh my gosh, we got 5 hundredths one day. You know, if you guys aren't familiar with rain ratios, I'm being facetious. But in the droughted areas that, you know, I can't get moisture to, my drilled soybeans don't hold a candle to the beans that were planted in 30-inch rows, because a precision corn row unit planter is a much better planter than a drill row unit. It's just, as I said, it's a controlled spill. And let's just scan across here real quick. You can see how this field is just filling in, and it kind of, from the road, it looks like your front lawn. As these beans grow up out of this no-till corn, last year's corn stalks that are, oh, by the way, let's zoom back out, they're really on the ground and breaking in and cut up nicely, sized nicely. I mean, the drill comes in and does a good job just planting right into it. You know, we did do some tillage on some of these fields that were corn in 2022, because you just got to do something. You can strip till, you can till the whole field, and you try to no-till as much as you can. But I will say, if you're in an area that does not get a lot of timely rains, or if you're not able to make your own rain when you need it, I would second guess going out and setting up to drill, you know, buying a bunch of Great Plain drills and thinking, hey, I'm gonna make it look like this, just like grow the farm up. I mean, it took me a few years to learn how to set the drill properly and everything. What I found with a drill, when you're drilling seed beans and soybeans, it's a lot like everything else with the drill. You want to see about 10% of the soybeans actually laying on the surface behind the drill when you're planting and you're out looking. You want to see about 10% of the beans planted about 2 inches deep, and the remaining 80% are everywhere in between a 1/4 inch deep, a 1/2 inch deep, an inch deep, and an 1.5 inch deep. And that's what gives you this you know, emergence like this. And it is kind of scary to scout behind a drill when the soybean crop is first emerging. And you know, look, there's some areas that are not filled in, but I would argue that there's less sunlight hitting the ground here than there are in 30-inch row beans as of today. And within 10 days, this is really going to canopy in almost everywhere except for areas like this. This is a great example right here. You know, not the best stand. I mean, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 20. Like, you got 35 beans in this 3x3 circle right here. Not a great area. Step over here, you got 135 beans in the 3x3 area. It's remarkable. And so, you know, as I said, beans are very, beans are very forgiving, you know, and they will grow and fill in. The only issue I've had with the drill is, again, just spots like this, you know. And look, this has got good herbicide activity on it, but that is that looks like a ragweed. That looks like a water hemp. And that looks like also a water hemp. Could be same family as Palmer, very close. But see, this has good herbicide activity on it, as these beans were sprayed about 10 days ago. And so that's what I've learned about Enlist and Xtendflex. That's the main difference. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I think, you know, as farmers, narrow row beans and trying to harvest as much sunlight as possible is really, you know, a good idea. I mean, we're farming the photosynthesis. That sun power is really, you know, sun and water, and good healthy soil, cover crops, fertility, and humic is what you need to make top yields. And so we're really just wanted to kind of show you guys this. I'm out doing a crop tour. I'm gonna head over and get some video of the 2 to 3 leaf seed corn that is now looking really good and emerging up through that 2.5 foot, 3 foot tall rye, cereal rye, clover, and vetch, a cover crop stubble that we planted into just a few videos ago, and we've been releasing some of those videos on the channel just so you guys can get a look at what it looked like from the cab and what it looked like from the ground planting into it. Now I'm going to go get some video of that and show you guys what that looks like emerging up through that cover crop. I wanted to come out here and shoot a quick video on narrow row beans and really give you the rundown on what is the actual difference between Enlist and Xtendflex and why you might want to use one trait package more than the other, or why you may not want to use one trait package more than the other. If you have any questions or comments, you know, I believe there's a whole section for that. Grow the farm up.